friends. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast, episode 27. Good to see you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Well, Americans, I guess. We are here at the end of November. IAE is coming to a close. Things are happening in Star Citizen, and we're just going to skip the general game news today because we got a lot to talk about. I've got my good friends here, the Astro Pub and Execute. How you guys doing today?
I'm going to start by saying I love that you conveniently scheduled this on the final day of AIE, so I couldn't go to sleep. If I get into any groans or weird, unaudible noises, you'll have to talk to Paul about translating what I'm saying, because I'm smashed.
I do speak American.
Yeah,
That's good, yeah.
I'm bad American.
I need some help getting the Australian text into something understandable. Thank you.
Yeah.
How you doing, Astro?
It's been a ride. You went away for the whole thing. You went away for family Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I was gone. It was a bummer because I was watching everybody like putting out videos talking about the ships. But honestly, I took a good few days away from Star Citizen. I haven't really.
You look refreshed.
Looked too much into the new ships. I haven't paid too much attention to IAE. It was a good little break.
I don't know about Paul, but I'm jealous how refreshed he looks. Like I want to feel like that.
It looks like he's been sleeping, you know?
Yeah. Got to sleep not on the floor.
I'm all right. I'm with X because we've both been doing IAE stuff. I've been doing a lot of stuff with the Info Runners, but then I've also been doing my own lore tours. So it's been busy. I'm looking forward to not next week because fortunately and unfortunately. It's more fortunate than unfortunate that I've got a paid opportunity next week, so I'm going to be doing some good stuff on stream.
Nice.
But on Friday, so keep a lookout for that. But other than that, after that, I'm going to have the sleep of the dead for a while. Just take a break until 316 comes out.
You guys go nuts for these events. I can't. I don't increase my video count when these events come by, but you guys start pumping out like a video every day, and I'm like.
The algorithm loves it, man. The
2 or 3 in some cases. Yeah. It's the best opportunity to help people. And I really enjoy helping people, and just the amount. I don't know if CIG hates or loves me from the point of how much money I save people. But I also encourage them to buy as well. So it's
like one of those things.
I'm a bit lost there. Yeah, but
It's like a never-ending Black Friday sale. Like, they're not going to be spending full price, but like, you're still getting the sales.
So I'm going to rest up, and then I'm actually going to start streaming. So that's my forte. I don't know if it's going to succeed or fail. But yeah, I'm going to have a go at doing that. I'm not going to do SC all the time though, but I'll do SC at least once a week. We'll see how it goes from there. Many
of the people who are either listening to or watching this podcast probably know both the Astro Pub and Execute. And if you don't, the Astro Pub is a streamer and YouTuber. He runs the Captain's Table. He also runs Office Hours, which are pretty cool. Nice little chat about Star Citizen. Execute is running Info Runners, which I am also a part of. And we talk a lot about ships, like he said, and talking about how you can save money on these ships if you decide to buy them, or what ships you just shouldn't buy because it's not for you. And that actually is a pretty good segue into what we're going to be discussing today, which is IAE overall, which is the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. It's an in-game convention in Star Citizen where you can see and fly just about every ship in the game and learn more about it and just have a good community experience. But we're also going to be looking a little deeper into the sales that go on during this event, the marketing tactics that might be used to get people to spend a little more money, and the new ships and what they mean for the game. So hope you guys are interested in a talk like that. But first, I'll just open it up to you guys. Did you have any highlights for the event this year?
I'm going to steal this from Execute because I know Execute's going to. Other than that, we'll talk about that. But the Jax videos, the Whitley's guide videos this year, were surprisingly good. I was expecting some good old classic, a galactic or grand tour or like whatever,
a 1 minute, like, 2 minute video.
Yeah, a little funny punch up and then out, you know, kind of thing. Not a sweeping character arc that both gives us an understanding of how long Jax McCleary has been doing this job, and also let us know about about his sidekick, his silent sidekick Jimmy.
Yeah.
And the emotions, the feels were real. So
honest question, did you actually feel it? Because I felt it. Like and just to put this in perspective, Paul and I watched it in a room with about 15 other people, everyone dead silent, and I'm like, I kind of want to like exclaim here, but I can't because other people can hear me. But I was like, oh, man, okay, I feel this. This. It's like it and because I was invested because I'd watched it like all week long.
Yeah.
And it was good.
It was great. I mean, I followed all three of them, but the last one I had me and my wife watched together, and because it was just a joy to watch. It was like watching a normal piece of media. It wasn't a Star Citizen specific trailer. It wasn't them trying to show off a ship just to show off a ship. It felt like an actual story, which was really nice.
And that leads into Squadron 42. Like, I'm like now going, whoa, where can this story go?
Yeah.
I don't mean that one with Jax, but like if they could do that in that short amount of time.
Paul's over here like, man.
When they've got me, because Paul's listened to it. He knows.
Oh, yeah. I accidentally spoiled myself because we were looking for a specific piece of audio for my stream, and
you spoiled yourself, huh? Okay.
And
was
so
it
I had
one or two? I just sorry.
We had access. I had access to some leaked audio files from way back in the day. And so we're going through these files to find old audio of Tessa, and the problem is that CIG doesn't label their files anything, so it's just numbers. So you have to kind of go off of length. And so it was me and another person were going through these files, and we started pulling out Squadron 42 audio files with Chris Roberts' like voice, like direction in the background.
Oh wow! Like raw.
It's like, and you're getting
files.
attacked. You know, like it's him doing
the mouth sound effects
direction. Yeah, doing the mouth sound effects and everything. So it was like as a result, by the time we'd finally found the files, I was like, I already know like the entire story. So let's just finish figuring out what the fuck this story is about. So we went through the whole story, and it's been like I went there, and the end was what I said was, this isn't high cinema. This isn't like Last of Us quality. You're not going to see people being like, my life has changed now that I've played Squadron 42.
Right.
But I think if it manages to get it best, it's going to be a Marvel movie, like a solid to good Marvel movie.
It's a popcorn cruncher.
It's a good popcorn cruncher with a lot of good enough action to get some story elements and characters that you're invested in, and you'll get away from it being like, this is nice. If you've played like Halo 1 or the like Call of Duty Modern Warfare or something like Black Ops, where you're actually getting a little bit invested in the characters, like that, but like a little bit more towards Mass Effect. It's like that mixed with Mass Effect.
Honestly, that it doesn't sound like high cinema or what have you, but like that's a good bar to meet. If they were to get to that point, it would be better than I expect. So that's good to hear. Yeah. I do want to say though, and I know this would never be an actual possibility, but it would have been so funny if you had taken some of those Chris Roberts sound lines and used them as effects in your stream. Like people could trigger if you're getting shot. You hear Chris pop up. You're getting attacked. Pew pew pew. Yeah, that would have been great. So the stories were amazing, and honestly, I feel like they put some things into these videos. And if you guys haven't seen them, go check out the Star Citizen YouTube channel. They're really cool. It's a 4-part series. Each of the parts is like 3 to 4 minutes, so it's a solid amount of content, and they're very well put together. But they put a couple things in there that I see or hear, and I get, and I know it's marketing, so we can't run away too much with it. But it's fun to get a little speculation in. And one of the things that I really kind of liked to play with in my head, a little made up lore, was how Jax was talking about how he wanted to get out and get away and like set up and anchor down somewhere in the middle of space. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this dude's talking about like flying way out to like the Croshaw system or the Banshee systems, somewhere way out there. He's like, maybe I'll go to the Pyro system. And what that, it's probably me thinking too far into it, but what that made me think was like, maybe this Whitley's guide is actually pretty localized. And like, when we discover more star systems, we'll start to get more of these sort of TV shows and programs like that you just don't see in Stanton because nobody outside of those systems care. And that kind of stuff is the freaking bread and butter of Star Citizen. I love that. And I hope that's the direction they go.
What if it's more simple and it's just telling us that AIE is going to be at Pyro next year?
Maybe
that would be dumb and amazing. from an in-lore perspective, it'd be like, you know what? Let's take the Berlin car show or some major car show of the year, and let's put it in the middle of Mogadishu. Let's go to Kabul. Let's just put it in Kabul next year. That's fine.
Right? Like let's host E3 in the Syrian civil war.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wouldn't be a good idea. Although I guess you're getting that firsthand experience of what those ships can do military wise. Yeah. So the videos were really cool. How about the ships? What do you guys think of like the introductions to ships, vehicles, and stuff that they brought out for IAE this year?
I'll start pretty easily. I think they were fine. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of these ships are things that are like we don't really need in the game yet. Like the Spartan is going to be good next year or the year after next. Right. What was the other one?
Raft.
The Raft. Yeah, the Raft is a fine cargo ship, but its main gimmick is loading and unloading. And it's not in the game yet, you know. And the Odyssey looks fine, but it's a JPEG. Like it's nothing until it is something. And I like the concept of it, but it's kind of expensive for a picture until we can see what it actually does in games. So. Yeah. So yeah, it's one of those like, yeah, they're pretty good. I don't think this is the best year for IAE in terms of ships coming out, but it's not terrible. I've seen worse. So,
X, what about you?
For me, I think the surprises weren't the ships directly. It was the prices that really kind of surprised me. Like, so you're trying to tell me the missiles on the back of a ballista are worth $60? Because that's. Yeah, well, a ballista's 125, which is the price of the Raft.
It's expensive.
And then the Spartan is only 65. That doesn't make any sense. And then again, you put a ballista up against a Raft, you'd take the Raft, wouldn't you? So, it's just.
And they call the Spartan, or I guess the Atlas chassis, modular, right? Or can you actually change things in and out, or no?
Not yet.
We actually, so you know your mate Drazen. We actually recorded an episode with Drazen and some other military guys specifically talking about the modularity and other things that might come with land vehicles, but we're going to have to re-record it.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I'll link that to you at some point.
But that really speaks to your point that like, if they're going to do modules, then how are you going to tell anybody to ever buy a ballista? Because they could just buy the Spartan and then upgrade. That is a very strange choice of pricing. Maybe they initially overpriced the ballista and now they don't want to lower it?
I think realistically, you look at that gun and you go maybe $10. So to me, I think they just went, it would be too close to have one at 110 and one at 125 or something like that, you know. So I think that's kind of why they've done it. But even the thing what we're noticing is for years when we're talking in fronters is how they've been clumping stuff together, and it's really annoying because they thought they were going to make more money. And I think they've had this fundamental shift where they've realized that Warbond CCs is the future of how to make money. So they seem to be separating everything. And to give you an example, when the Redeemer came out, we're like, the Redeemer's either going to be $300 to sit kind of where the mole and stuff like that is, or it's going to be $350. Where'd they put it? Smack bang in the middle where no ship existed.
Okay, so you're saying in terms of price, they're separating things out to fill in more gaps.
Yeah, and that way, if there's literally all these ships, you can just buy more. You'll buy more Warbond CCUs, so they'll make more money. If they just have them all $5 apart, that's $5 you got to buy for every single one, and it's all got to be cash. So they've almost done a complete backflip, and it's going to be really interesting to see because I think they're doubling down on Warbond CCUs.
And I think I heard that there was no Warbond CCU for one of the new ships, or there was no. Yeah. So what would be the reasoning behind that?
Because they knew a lot of people are going to jump ship from the Carrack. I think that's the big one. And I also think the Banner Merchantman they're trying to probably encourage a lot of people to get rid of their Banner Merchantmans, so that allows people to jump off from that to the Odyssey. And well, if you go back, Paul, how long ago was it they showed that graph that had the Aurora, the Mustang, and then it had the Vanguard, and I think the most popular ship after that was the Carrack. And the Vanguards have been melted left, right, and center because of how that went down. Mm-hmm. So the Carrack, there must be way too many Carracks, so they're trying to thin the water. Is what again, it's all speculation, but that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's important to remember that was like 2019. It's important to remember that CIG does a lot of work to try to balance out which ship is existing in the verse. And it wouldn't be surprised if the Odyssey is also a response to, hey, the Carrack was super popular, but it's too good. Like, why would you choose any other ship? And then so they chose an Odyssey as a kind of a counter to that, to try to pull some Carrack owners away, to try to diversify the ship up so you don't have ships up, so you don't just constantly see Carracks. I think that's kind of what they're doing.
That was going to be my question, because I was like, but wouldn't they have made it the same, Paul, if they were trying to make a new ship? Because then they want you to buy two. But then you answered my question.
Diversification. And that was going to be, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but that's kind of the crux of this episode. Then we'll get deeper into it following this conversation. But for everybody who's listening, really want to dive into the idea of why we see some of these ships that might appear to be very similar to others, or might appear to be a little bit redundant in their use. But it's also good to remember just the overarching nature of Star Citizen, and like Astro Pub is saying, this is, it diversifies the ships a little bit. It gives people a little more choice, and it might not necessarily say, hey, this is better than that, but it allows somebody to do more of what they want to do. So you believe that maybe they're trying to diversify the ships and pull people away from Carracks, but is it a good idea to be doing that right now when people aren't even flying ships for what they're used for?
Yes, because it's not about players.
It's about the role that they're playing, how they're using the ship.
It's about the role. Well, it's not even just players. These ships aren't designed just for players. They're designed to be background ships in the universe. So, and the reality is like, these ships would be made anyways. They'll be released today or tomorrow or a year or 2 years or 3 years from now. They'll be released, and the more ship options we have in the verse, the better options we're going to have in the long run.
That's fair. As long as it's a placeholder that says that it's taking that spot, they can plan around it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little nonplussed about like the Raft. The fact that the Raft, half of its functionality, its whole gimmick, isn't even available in game when it's released, which is something CIG said they'd stop doing, but they're doing it anyways. But like the its actual gimmick isn't a bad thing. Self unloading and loading cargo. Like, people go, oh, well, it's not as good as X, Y, or Z ship. It's not as good as the Max. It's like, yeah, but the Max is, you got to throw everything inside that cargo bay, then you got to take that out by hand.
Right.
Or it's not as good as the whole B. But then again, you're going to have somebody else to help you unload all that cargo, versus with the Raft, you can just sit down, your crane operator drops all those things off, and then you're off to the races again. So it's super efficient in comparison. So like, I can see the role there. It makes sense. It's just, why now?
So I kind of look at it from a team perspective. You can't have like, one of the things that people keep asking for is more gameplay, right? And to the point where I've heard people say, I want all the gameplay, then go back and do other stuff. You can't do that. You got to realize this is a team of people, and they are building things incrementally, and so fundamentally, we've just seen new ships come out over time. That is the only way it ever would have been done. You can't just go, maybe now, because we've only got 50 ships left, but I don't reckon when they started this out, they went, here's all 200 ships. They probably had, here's all the roles, so large to small, medium, large capital, and then all the roles. So they had like a big graph of everything they wanted to hit. But I reckon that's all they had at the start, and it just naturally has to be done as they go through it. Yeah. And I think they probably also worked out the best way to sell them in a particular order to maximize profits. I think that's why we haven't seen a lot of the middle large ones. Like, we don't have the we technically have the mole, but like, you don't have the medium salvage or mining, generally speaking, and they're probably going to be some of the more popular ones.
Yeah, it certainly feels like I think it's probably pretty predictable that they didn't know all the ships that were going to be in the game when they started making it. I mean, you could look at something as simple as, oh, they've players in 2019 were saying that missiles were too strong, so they had to take away some of the power of missiles, but that meant that they needed a ship that had more missiles to make up for it. So they made a new ship with more missiles, and they couldn't have known that was going to be a thing until they were balancing the game and working on gameplay. So some people will call it feature creep. In some ways, it could be considered feature creep, but a lot of the times, I feel like this is just how you have to build it. You run into a problem, and you're like, hey, we need something to solve that. Let's make it. But I
was going to say that's exactly the same mentality. From what I've heard, what happened was for Squadron, they were originally going to heavily use the Redeemer, but the Redeemer wasn't ready yet, and it was not quite fitting the role that they wanted to. So then they had to make the Hoplite. Then the Hoplite filled that role, and then they had time on their hands, so they just said, let's just make a dedicated dropship. And so they made the Valkyrie, and so now the Valkyrie takes the role of the Hoplite in the game, but it's still like it's now you have the Hoplite, the Valkyrie, and the Redeemer. All three ships are still in the game. They still have the same similar roles, but because they were built for specific purpose in Squadron 42, in a normal game development, you would have just tossed that. I remember early looks at Halo, the original Halo, where they had a bunch of they had a bunch of ideas they had to toss because they had to just keep going. And then in Halo 2, Halo 3, they've
Halo was an RT.
They brought them back.
Yeah,
it was an RTS.
Yeah, RTS.
And then it was a third-person game.
Can I just add one more? MT, the Cyclone MT. I think that is another one that can fall into that bracket. And I think they need to find a way to just go, right, we've cut this from the game, guys, so in return, you're going to get this much better ship. So, I actually reckon they should just cut the Hoplite, and everyone that owns the Hoplite just gets a Valkyrie. Well, I don't think anyone can complain at that.
But I was thinking about this the other day, how the Hoplite doesn't seem like it's very useful, but if you look at the other dropships, both the Valkyrie and the Redeemer, the jump seats are super far away from the exit. So the Hoplite would be the only one that you could really take and actually get your people out in a reasonable amount of time.
Well, the Hoplite was actually...
Yeah,
it's designed as a fighter, so it's a fighter that also happens to carry troops.
Yeah.
So I think that's not a bad. It's still not a bad choice.
No, it doesn't have to. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say who gets hurt when you have more ships like that?
Right?
Who cares?
Yeah, people will say it pulls time away from the other development, but to be honest,
but it's part of development.
It will pull time away from another heavy fighter, most likely, or another Aegis ship or something. It won't necessarily slow down salvage because they're working on a new dropship. But it really does go to show that not everybody needs all these ships. You don't have to pick up a ship just because it's a cargo ship and you like cargo. Pick up the cargo ship that also, has seats for armed escort, or pick up the cargo ship that has a docking tube that can connect to stations. I think we have started to see that a lot more, like you said, with the Cyclone MT, like we're seeing here with the Raft, like we saw with the Rock DS. These are all things that people have seen and responded to and been like, why would I need that? And I feel like the answer more often than not is you don't.
Can I just add something in here? Mm-hmm. When we had the military guys looking at the dropships, they went through every single one in the game, and they literally said every single one has their place. I said you can look at any one, and at a particular role, it is better than any other one. And I think you could apply that to almost any ship in the game, even ones that look like they've been superseded, like the Hoplite. Because I think of the Hoplite versus the Prowler thing before they changed it, but that was in game was more expensive than the Prowler. But I can see the Prowler's probably better stealth wise. But as you said, there's drop seats at the back. It's technically smaller. It's faster. It can fight. I can see strengths there. So what I'm trying to get at is I think every single ship, as long as they're still got a strength, that's fine. But then I start looking at things like the MT and the turret and stuff. That might get a bit more grey.
Yeah, just because it kind of stomps on the old Cyclones a bit. Yeah.
Well, why would you want a TR or an AA when they both have something missing? When you could take the MT and it's more versatile, and you're literally talking. The TR's dead, or essentially, it's only the AA that has more missiles. So,
and I'm wondering if this is something that they can really benefit from. Basically, what we've been talking about, that they have all the time they need. I mean, kind of, So they can go back to these vehicles, and even if they do get crowded out by something else, like we saw with the Redeemer, they can find ways to make them work a little bit better. But I guess there's some balance as to like how often do they do that? How often do they listen to the community? We say that, hey, the MT makes the TR a little useless. Can you change up the TR to be something that we can actually use? Do they stick to their guns, or do they change it up? Because sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We saw with the 400i recently that they tried it with the Cyclone thing, or the Rock thing, and we've seen other instances of that happening. But I always wonder how far they should go when it comes to changing things up to make sure that everything has its place.
I mean, I think they're getting better at it. Like for instance, the 300. Like I remember back in the day when the 300 and the Cutlass were just absolute bad. They were just bad.
Yeah.
They got outclassed by everything in the game, and so they had to go back and completely rework the 300 and completely rework the Cutlass from the ground up, and they created better ships as a result. And even though, say, the 325A isn't the best choice, the most meta choice for fighter, that doesn't mean it's a bad choice in the game. It just means it's a different choice, and if a pilot can get good at it, they can really like make that thing work. The same with the Cutlass. Like the Cutlass is better than it used to be, but it's also not better than it used to be. It's still kind of in the same weird role, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game, a bad ship. It just means it's different than you'd expect. I've had this argument with a lot of ships like the PUV and stuff like that as well. But like CIG seems to be more focused on ensuring that every ship has a place, even if that place isn't popular or is super niche. And I think that's not a bad thing, and that's what the gold passes are doing right now too, which I think is good style as well.
Yeah,
I think there's a couple of things I want to add there, unless you want to say something first, guys. So the niche stuff is correct. And I think the other one that's really important to look at, some ships can look weak, but that's because they're super versatile and like master of none. And I think that's kind of where the Cutlass falls for me. It does a lot of things, but it doesn't do anything perfectly. Like you can use it as a drop ship, you can use it to transfer rocks, you can use it as a fighter. I would argue it's probably the most versatile ship in the game right now in the current like state of the game. You can do all the box missions, you can combat with it. Like I think anyone that owns that would have a great time.
Yeah.
And the other part was when you were talking about when they need to change things. And I feel for me, it's in a weird place right now because you have those voices that are on, that are always complaining on Spectrum and stuff. But then if something genuinely is bad, there's a huge flare from all these voices you don't normally hear. And that's when I think they respond. And I think they respond pretty well when that happens. I think the last one, Paul, was the kind of the reason why people voted for MPUV, because they didn't like how that system worked. And I think they're going to make big changes come next year. You correct me if you think I'm wrong there, but
I think you're right.
I could see them reacting to that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And the differentiation between the ships, I think, also falls a little bit in line with the differentiation between the way that people are playing the game. So like some people are going to go really hardcore with this game, obviously, learn all of the things they can and get really good at mining, salvaging, repair, everything. Some people are going to play super casually, jump in for a couple hours a week and just have a little bit of fun. The people who are doing that, they're not going to care about all these ships. These ships aren't really for them. These ships are for the people who are getting deeper into it. They might crew those ships, but a lot of the ships that are coming into this game, I don't think they really hold that much value to casual players. And CIG, I think, might know that, honestly. It feels like they're starting to fit ships into more roles. They started this with the combat rebalance in the summer. We saw they're kind of releasing ships that feel really particular. Like we've been saying, the Raft and the Odyssey are both super particular. Like the Odyssey is just a little bit different from the Carrack. And I think they're really trying to nail down the people who want the more specialized ships. I hope that they don't step away from ships like the Cutlass, like you're saying, and move away from the generalized multi-crew ships, because I think those are super useful, but we're seeing a lot of specialized ships lately. And there's a lot in the back burner.
I do think they try, though. So, like, I think you would agree they had best intentions there with the Raft to try and get that to work with the cargo refactor, but then they pushed the cargo refactor.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And, but I think we'd also both agree, or all agree, rather, that they should have just pushed that ship. They should have pushed it and released it with the cargo refactor. And they were like, oh, we're going to lose money. And that worries me. Like, if they're putting profit before the game.
Right. So that's, I think, you guys both, I think, saw that I had a little tweet, and we had some threads going. And I was trying to explain to people what my problem with the ship is, because it's not the ship. I freaking love the ship. I think the Raft is sick. I'll probably do some cargo hauling in there. I think the docking collar replacement is really cool. I think the cranes are awesome. The tractor beam placement's dope. Living quarters are great. Everything's cool about the ship. The fact that it was very clearly planned to go with the cargo refactor, and then when the cargo refactor got pushed but the ship didn't, that's kind of what bugged me, because they specifically said they didn't want to release ships with dead systems on them. And it can still cargo haul, sure, but so can a freelancer. And as far as this functionality works, it doesn't seem that much different. So it's kind of a dead system since the benefit's not there.
This is almost that la-di-da moment, Paul.
Mm-hmm. And what is that?
I'll let. Do you want me to do it, or do you want to do it, Paul?
Go ahead, X. I saw it from last time, so.
So yeah, okay, right, yeah. So we were we were talking about. We kept comparing it to the whole series, and people in the comments were like, "What are you talking about? It's got nothing to do with the whole series." Blah blah blah. Mistake comes out, and whole B just like leapfrogs the Raft, and we're like, "Bloody-da!" Like, we saw this coming.
The whole B leapfrogs the Raft.
In price.
In price.
Oh, in price.
Yeah, it went from like, what was it?
$90.
No, yeah, $90 to 130 or something. Yeah, and up $40.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, and people are saying it's got nothing to do with the Raft. The Raft is more expensive, therefore it's better, blah, blah, blah. And then it just comes out and just goes over the top of it. And it's like, yes, because we were comparing it to the Raft, and they had deliberately in the videos compared it to a freelancer, and we were like, no, that's not the same. The freelancer, I would compare it to the freelancer max, but the freelancer max was what, $25 more expensive, and it is it does more SCU. And the people that were arguing with me in the comments were about like, but it carries these large cargo containers. And I said, but that gameplay is not yet to be seen, because what if you're carrying loose cargo and you have no large cargo container? You can't pick that up with the Raft.
Yeah. And
so, yeah.
And we're not paying for like the docking fees or the storage fees or anything like that. So that stuff doesn't matter, but I imagine that comes with the cargo refactor. And
can I just say something? This relates back to what we just said, but that very strongly shows you that both ships have a place. Because one's for big cargo containers and one's for the, you know what I mean? And how Paul was saying about everything's got its niche. So there's an example of it right there and then with those two.
And those are two that both store their cargo on the exterior, so that is something that separates them apart, but then they're still differentiated through that.
And there'll be another ship. Oh, well, there you go. There's the freelancer. The freelancer's got it all on the inside. Boom, there you go. There's your three right there.
So here is a good question then. Did they need to bring the Raft in for the cargo refactor, or could they have expanded or rather taken advantage of that refactor through the use of the whole series instead?
They could have definitely done both, but the question isn't rather, this is the important part to remember. The question is, why make the whole series better when you can make a different ship that does the same thing but has a slight tweak to it?
And just fill in the gap.
Because it fills in the roles in the universe. It makes more diversity. You're not going to see, because we're all going to, as I said before, NPCs are going to be flying it and players are going to be flying it. And so you may have ships like the Argo Cargo, which are very rarely going to be used by players, but you'll see them all over the place for the NPCs. The Raft may not be a popular place in places like Terra, but you go out to, say, Cascom in Castra or Nyx, where they just don't have as many facilities for unloading and loading cargo. Suddenly there's rafts everywhere because the NPCs would make sense to use it, and then players thus would make sense to use it. It all comes down to having ships that are the same style is fine, but when you can have a ship that has a slight variation on it, it makes it a little bit more interesting. Because now the same people who would have had a hull B may have swapped over from a hull B to a Raft. So now instead of having 1,000 hull Bs in the universe, you have 800 hull Bs and 200 Rafts.
Right.
You know.
Paul, can I?
Go ahead.
I've got to interrupt because I just had this really painful idea. The guy that brought the hull to the Raft CCU before the price went up.
Ooh.
Oh,
because they didn't raise the price
right?
when the ship came out.
Yeah.
No, there's got to be at least one person that did that.
Oh,
at least.
That is, I feel like you should be able to get in touch with community or support and like get that figured out.
Sorry, I just thought I had to bring that up. Sorry to interrupt, Paul.
I had at least one of my community members say I almost did that. I'm glad I didn't. Ooh. So I know it's probably happened. It's probably happened.
Wow.
Squadron 42, Paul. Obviously, I think the Raft might even be in there too for the the scenes with Halsey. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the other thing to remember is that, like I said, about the evolution of the dropship stuff is like. All of that stuff was just unused assets because they were going to put it in Squadron 42 anyways. So why not put it in the PU? And there's probably a bunch of stuff that we're seeing coming into the game, like the Raft, that could be just one of those things. Like, hey, we needed a section of this game where you have to like load up cargo, and instead of like here's a Raft, we've invented a ship that can do that instead of doing it with the hull or whatever. So
going back to the statement that they made at the beginning of the year about the dead systems in the ships, and we were talking about the Raft. This is, I would say, the second time since that statement was made that we've gotten a ship that kind of was missing a major part of its functionality. The first being the 400i not having a scanning suite, or rather, the ability to use its scanning table. Do you think this is going to be just kind of, these are just a couple of mistakes? Do you think that we should forget about that statement? I'm not sure exactly how to approach that anymore, because that's what I say when I do my reviews. I go to the ship section and I'm like, check out this new ship, check out this new ship. Just like they said, they're in the game and they work how they're supposed to. The A2, the C2, the M2, all of these things are coming in and they're doing their thing. But then we got to the 400i and I couldn't say that. So now I'm wondering, like, are you guys expecting it to be carried on? Or?
Is that 400i its main functionality? Because I think most people would argue it's touring, and it does still do a little bit of cargo as well. So it's got some functionality.
It does have some functionality. But
that'd be the grey area they'd use to justify putting it in the game.
But didn't they say that it can't be used for the high class passenger transport missions for touring?
But isn't touring just also just like a form of exploring? Around?
Yeah, you could probably use it for that. Granted, that's not in the game, so
yeah.
I think it's an exploration ship. I don't know, but they have the exploration table there, and it doesn't work. And they have the crane on the Raft, and it doesn't work. So those are just the two things that I'm looking at. And I'm wondering, are ships going to come out next year? Should we expect them to work? Should I expect to see a ship on the roadmap and be like, okay, it's coming out. The whole A is coming. I'll be able to put boxes in it. No problem. It's going to work. Or should I be like, the whole A is coming out, but maybe 2 patches later we'll be able to use the boxes? It sets me back to pre-2021 where I didn't know if a ship was going to work or not.
You've triggered something in my head too, like tractor beams, because that means the tractor beams have to work for the Raft. We've seen art for the handheld tractor beam, but does that mean? And then I start going to other things like the Paul's favorite little Origin ship, the 315P, the Cutlass, blah blah blah. Wow, we could have a lot of tractor beams.
Yeah.
Come this time next year.
Yeah, I imagine that's one of the big things they've been working on with all the different models that they have for it.
Sorry to change the subject.
No, it's what I was thinking as well. This whole I don't know. Like the best way I could approach it, if I was to give CIG any kind of advice for this, is be as specific as possible.
Yeah.
Being general, like saying we're going to try not to release anything that doesn't have its full functionality, that have any dead functionality. That's fine, but then you get into a situation where you've released 2 things without their full functionality, and people point at that statement and go, why? The statement was here.
Because they're only human, Paul.
I know, but
of course, but there's always room for mistakes and stuff like that.
Yeah. But own them. Own the mistakes and just say, hey, we need it. But the problem is that they don't want to own this mistake because the answer is money.
Yeah, and also if they own the mistakes, articles galore all the time.
Yeah. So the reality is I think just going forward, being as specific as possible with these sorts of things. Don't be too general, because general can be problematic. Like I had this conversation before, and there was somebody from my community who's been there for a very long time. To show you how kind of toxic this kind of stuff can be, I made the same statement. It's like I'm not a fan of this, and someone then said like, oh well, you're trying to use your expertise as a marketer to prove that I'm wrong, and you weren't actually a marketer for long enough for this to matter. Like I've had people come out the woodwork pulling that stuff on me. Like I was working on it for 4 years. I'm not like a non-expert. You're trying to say that I didn't work on it long enough, and that's the kind of experience I've had. It's like when you do any critique of CIG's practices like this, you get people crawling out of the woodwork saying, trying to make you say what they think you're saying, and then try to use that as against you, and it's super non-comfortable. I would say that for me to have to kind of say something like that, or to have to do something like that. Because I had to ban him, because I was just like, that's incredibly offensive. That's like coming into somebody who's saying like, oh, you've only been a doctor for 2 years, or like I say I'm a teacher. You've only been a teacher for X number of years. You obviously haven't had enough experience. It's like, wow, way to be a jerk about that. And that's the problem I have with these sorts of statements, is because not only does it affect CIG, it also affects us. And anytime somebody tries to call CIG out on something that they mistake, now suddenly we're the bad guys. Suddenly we want the game to fail because we want to make sure that we're holding CIG to accountable. So that was the message I was going to say to CIG is, please be more specific when you're dealing with these things. If you even think that you may have to, say, hey, we may release some things with most of its functionality, its main functionality, but it may miss some auxiliary things.
And they always have the disclaimer. Jared always says it. It's a game in development. Things change. And things do change. That's 100% like what we're expecting. This was just like, we can't make statements like that, because that's different from other things that they've said. That is a pretty major statement to make, especially because ships are the main part of this game. So I feel like that's something that needs to have a little bit more scrutiny placed on a statement if you're going to put that out there.
I think you can't answer it there, because like they're more worried about having to explain themselves. Like I think most of the community, I don't want to brand or unbrand people, but I think most of the community is pretty mature and level-headed. But there are just outliers that are really loud and will kick and scream. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's definitely true. The arguments about this game get what's the word? I don't want to say co-opted, but like they get moved. You start an argument and it will freaking run a course. You will end up talking about like 6 different things that you had no intention of talking about, because like you said, Paul, you started talking about the marketing and suddenly you were arguing about your profession. And that just kind of happens.
Lowball. They just want to win, or Australian term pissing contest. And I just, I get that all the time. Like I was in, as a content creator, I'm not going to go into it like Paul did, but not to crap on what you were saying, Paul, but like I don't want to give another example. But yeah, people just, I don't know. Have we got targets on our back because we're content creators? I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
No, I think it's just a matter of you put your voice out there more and you get more conversation about it.
Yeah. Well, and my point wasn't to be like, woe is me. It was more a point towards CIG. Like whenever they make statements, we are the ones, the content creators are often the ones who get targeted by
we're the first line of defense, so to speak.
We're the first. We're the first. Like we're the
easy targets.
We're the,
to put it simply, how often do you
the essential workers?
How often do you get people who jump into your streams or videos or something and be like, "Oh, wait, you can actually play this game?"
Yeah.
Because that's the easiest way to lay it out.
Well, I mean, it's like ever you see someone screaming, see a Karen screaming at like some poor like cashier who's just like, I can't use this coupon because it expired, and they're like, wah, rah, 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 and you have to get the manager up, and that cashier is making minimum wage, if maybe a little bit better, and is just wants to go home, and they have this woman who's screaming about a 30% off coupon, for like a dog toy, and now suddenly it's this big deal, and it's adding to that person's stress. It's like that's essentially
they're actually lower down on the totem pole than the customer is. They get treated like shit by the employee, as an employee. Yeah, and
that's kind of how content creators are for Star Citizens. Like, we often get the shit that CIG does when we're not the ones making the decisions.
Yeah. And that's why I'm sure people are listening to this and thinking this is a little bit more negative than normal. This is simply that. This is we are speaking out because we can already see this coming from what has happened at IAE. Not to say that IAE again was a bad event. We all liked it, but there are things that happened during the event and have been happening that, you can already kind of see where it's going to go. But overall, you guys, what were your feelings on the event this year compared to other years?
Maybe it's because we've had so many of these, but it feels average. There have been worse IEs. I remember like the second or third IE was just awful. It was just terrible.
17?
17, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the year that they decided to do Lorville twice. It was either Lorville twice or Area 18 twice. It was just like, it was literally the exact same layout.
Yeah, it was the one. Yeah. Because then the next year they did the Idris, I think. Right?
Yeah.
That was the repeat.
Yeah. No,
that was probably one of the best ones.
That was the first one.
That was the first one.
Yeah. And then the second one, they didn't do the Idris, but then they literally copy pasted all of the assets levels, and then just changed the date. That was it.
Yeah.
20. It was, and so it was like, it was horrible. And then the year after that, was the first year they went to Art Corp, I think.
Yeah.
And then it was pretty cool because it was a new location. And then they went to Microtech, and that was pretty cool. And then now they're back in Microtech again, and it's like, it's not as bad as that second year, but I'm starting to feel the drag a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think that they just didn't want to have that extra work to do on Orison?
I think Orison wouldn't have handled the people.
Yeah.
The cloud tech is not ready for it.
Yeah. I thought it might have been a combination of those two, because like everybody would just end up turning their clouds off, and then it wouldn't be an enjoyable venue, or as enjoyable as it would have been.
Honestly, I'm waiting for them just to make a space station called the AIE, like Space Station Expo or whatever, and it just moves from place to place. Like they'll just do one, and that's it, and we're done, and they'll just move it.
Just a giant flotilla, and like to get to the different halls, you have to take little flying shuttles to the other ships. That'd be crazy. What did you think of it, X, compared to other years?
Like for me, it was enough new assets that it changed, but I'm going to be honest with you, I only went there 3 times. The information for me is not in the game. It is out of game for me. I think for streamers it's definitely more in the game, but I question, like, if you're buying a ship, are you really going to go in there and look at it if you haven't already looked at it already? Because I think, like, I don't know about you guys, but I would have looked at it months in advance, my best friend's ship or whatever, and flown that. I would know months in advance what I'm buying, unless it's a brand new ship, and the exception to that this year would be the Raft and the Spartan.
Right.
And I would argue that more people were buying the Raft than the Spartan, so that also lines up with why the servers ran really bad on that day, because there was more people in game trying to. If you got to Microtech, like, it was terrible. I actually once spawned in and there was no land. It was just all buildings, and I had to navigate by land. There was no trees, no ground, just buildings. Well, it was really strange.
That's how it is. I mean, yeah, it's IAE, it's cool. They put the sails up, and the convention center is cool, but like the most popular day is the day the new ship gets released.
Yeah.
It feels like a chance for impressions to me. Like, their goal isn't necessarily to just sell ships, but they want to get people into them for free. They want to get them in front of people so that maybe by the time we're at Invictus Week, or maybe even IAE of next year, they're like, man, I remember flying that MSR during IAE, maybe it's time to pick it up.
Can I float an idea? And this is just based on the flotilla or the space station. What if they had space stations that were manufacturer based and they appeared one after the other in different locations, but they stayed? So as the time went on, so in the last maybe 4 days, all of the space stations are there, and you can take a new person round and get all the ships. And because you're not forcing everyone into that one area, the servers wouldn't have the load that they have, like in New Babbage. They would run better.
Mesh the crap out of them.
Well, I don't know if you've had time to play on. I'm assuming you haven't because you've been with family.
Oh, yeah.
But doing quests when IAE is on is it's a chore.
I haven't really had great quest experiences since we started playing 3.15. I would say when they work well, and I love them. But like a lot of the new missions that they put in with the spawn closets have just not been working for one reason or another. Somebody's stuck inside of one. Somebody's shooting me when they shouldn't be. The people spawned outside of the outpost. It's just like just random things happening. But I imagine during IAE it was much worse.
Yeah, it's not terrible, but like the problem is that Star Citizen is no longer in a position where it's like it's no longer in a position where it's like sort of works, kind of okay. It either is like near flawless in its execution or is completely bugged.
Yeah.
Like you don't have in-betweens anymore. It's like you either are like, oh yeah, I can like do these bunker missions and like they all spawn correctly and everything goes wrong, or it's like they're derped and like there's the one dude who's hiding somewhere in a locked closet and doesn't get out for whatever reason, and you're just stuck there for you know. It's you know, either all of the boxes spawn perfectly or one box is just gone, or you know the bounty spawns in a asteroid and blows themselves up. But if they spawn, then they're actually dipping and dodging and attacking you. Like it's
Straight in the head.
position. Yeah, like you go into the bunker mission and you're either just like dealing with SEAL Team 6 or you're dealing with like you know it's that Jurassic Park meme where it's like the John Williams score comes in and then halfway through it says kazoo. It's like that.
Yeah. It really does. It's like it's so unpredictable, and it's kind of funny because these new player streams that I do sometimes I've just been like, they're such a crapshoot. I don't know what's going to happen. It could be a great experience for them, or it could completely turn them off from the game. And that's probably happening like dozens of times a day.
There's a video there.
Yeah, definitely.
The unreliable, or I don't know what you call it, but like something like the unreliable new player experience.
I did a video earlier this year where I was trying to do the whole 0 to hero thing that's going on now. And so I was starting with a fresh profile, and I played through on stream for like a good 2 hours. And
I'm only doing this because I've been doing 0 to hero for 2 years, and now everyone's doing it. I'm like, yes.
It was
just spreading.
Terrible experience. I actually uploaded it as a video on my second channel, and it's called My Worst Experience in Star Citizen. And I wanted to put it out there because I was like, I constantly see people who are like, oh, this game runs like crap. Oh, content creators have it running well. I never see it run normally on YouTube. I'm like, here it is. It happens to everybody. Like it's really, it's either a failure or a success. And so I wanted that out there. But yeah, the glitches are especially bad, and I really hope that server meshing is on schedule for next year. I really do.
We all get them, man. I died twice just going to the AIE. Like you get to the top of that ramp and I'd face plant and die.
Yeah.
Did it happen to you? Happened to me twice,
multiple times.
Yeah,
it's happened on stream and off stream where you get up and you trip and fall and like hit your head and you immediately die, or you get
jump everywhere.
Bug. Your bug where it like throws you against the ceiling and then smashes you back down like some sort of rag doll, and you get up but you slowly bleed out. Like,
well, we've been doing, and I'm pretty sure you guys play PTU. We've had 3.15, I think, at least in the open PTU or maybe PTU Wave 2 for a month now. We had a lot of concerns, we had a lot of predictions and a lot of comments about how these things were going to change the game, whether they're going to ruin it, if anybody was going to be able to play. we're a month in. How are you guys feeling about the medical and inventory systems and how they've affected the game?
I'll be quite frank. They make the game more fun, but they also make the game incredibly more punishing.
Yeah.
And it'll get better, but then it'll get worse. As the systems roll out, it'll become a little bit better, but then they're going to also introduce more stuff. Like we're probably not too far away from Death of a Spaceman being implemented in the near year or two, with the progress they're making.
How are they going to do that in alpha?
I mean, you just
start a new character every time.
You start a new character, you know.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like the same last name or something like that, I assume.
Yeah. So, I mean, like it'll work the same way. It's just they have to test it anyways. So like, why not? And the white before beta starts anyways. So who cares?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I will be very, I'll be very excited to see what they kind of settle on in terms of how many of these like mini lives we get before we actually die as a character. Because they've thrown some numbers around.
I think it's also like one of the reasons it's been so vague, and I think it's only came clearer to me, you guys can weigh in here as well, is how badly you get injured. Because if you have to have a whole arm replaced, then that means down the road, if you know, do you know what I mean? So like if your body's actually more and more punished, that's what's going to kill you.
Yeah.
So basically, if you get like, if you just get like a paper cut and you get 1,000 paper cuts, but that's all you ever get, you'll be fine. But if you lose an arm, and then you lose another arm, and then you lose another leg, and then I think there'll be a tipping point where you've just taken so much trauma, you die.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't get to get your opinion. What have you been thinking of the systems though, X? Since you started playing with them.
As in the medical? My first. Yeah. So, liking the inventory, it's really showing me the size of what the universe is going to be. I hate having to go back to get shit because I forgot it, but I understand. I definitely think there's going to be a thing in the game at some point where you can transfer stuff to yourself, but it'll take a time period. I think that needs to be a thing, like an NPC chucks it on their ship and brings it to you or something like that. I'd rather see that sooner rather than later because it's annoying. But I had to, and I'm very vain when it comes to how things look. So I flew all the way back across the universe at one point to pick up a skin, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's the transferring of physical components. I really want that in so I can like load up my ship with components and take them and put them on other ships rather than having to claim new ships. But again, as you guys have kind of said, that'll all come in time. It's all this kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that is just the nature of as they put things in, they're not going to work with each other initially, and then they will. So I think for me, like while sitting here listening to the last few things you've kind of said, server meshing, it just like everything, like when you were saying like it's all or nothing at the moment, essentially is what you said, and that's for me what it is. Like we're getting these low server pops where things work, and then as soon as the servers get loaded, the first thing that goes out the window is the NPCs. And they are all or nothing, and I think I'm really excited for server meshing because it's gonna, like, everything's just gonna fit well, not initially, again with what like Paul said, but when it starts to correct and go well, we're going to turn this corner, and I think a lot of people are going to go, so that's what they've been trying to do, and all, like, it's almost like all the lights will start turning on.
I do hope for that. And this podcast has been mainly about ships, about IAE. We got to talk a lot about that, but I want to finish up here and touch on one last topic about the server meshing. Actually, oh my gosh, I just forgot my question.
That sounds like a scenario thing.
I remember. We have for years had these times where we've OCS, server actor, network thing stuff, planet, different things, different back-end tech things that pop up, and people will be excited for them. And you'll often hear these comments, stop putting this out to be like a God patch. This isn't a Jesus patch. This isn't going to fix everything. we're starting to get to that again with server meshing coming back up, and a lot of people are starting to talk about it. Hey, this is going to fix stuff. This is going to be good. Now, obviously, we want to be hesitant about calling it a Jesus patch, because it's not going to fix everything. For starters, it won't be the initial version of it won't be dynamic server meshing. It won't be scaled up. We won't have a ton of people in every shard. It's going to be basic. But do you think players can look towards server meshing coming in next year? Maybe not the first patch, but the first 2 or 3 as an actual turning point for the way that they can look at this game.
Do you want to take this first?
Go, yeah, sure. I think it's going to happen before. Go ahead. You want to go first? Go for it.
Oh no! I did ask that, and then
you guys can go at the same time if you'd like.
At the same time, yeah.
Me to take it first. That's what I said. Sorry if I confused you. So I was just going to say, I still think it's going to be incremental. I can do the short version and then let Paul say what he needs to say. So yeah, go for it.
So I think we're actually going to start seeing that with the introduction of the Gen 12. I think the Gen 12 renderer is, because the thing about it, if you look at CIG's discussion about the server meshing, they all have basically said server meshing is not a god patch. It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to make the game feel better. It's not going to do what you think it does. But then in response to like, what will do it? And they all go Gen 12 renderer. They almost always in at the same time say the Gen 12 renderer will fix a lot of these problems. And the answer is, performance-wise, it'll improve it.
Right.
It will allow for the game to look better. It'll run better on most hardware, and it'll reduce some of the loads on the servers, because the servers will load things in slightly different in how they handle this. So I think we'll start to see that in the Gen 12 renderer when that starts getting implemented. We've already started to see it.
Yeah.
One of the things I will say right now is I have a beefy rig, so it's a little different from most. It's built for Star Citizen, but I rarely drop below 30 FPS in even places like Orison.
That sounds so nice.
I max out at about 60, so my average is somewhere in like the 45 to 50 range.
Oh my gosh.
At 1080.
I'm so jealous.
And the game,
should I tell him I got a 3080 Ti last week?
How?
100 FPS. 100 FPS.
It really is a combination of like the graphical, like the hardware you need. It's not even the graphics card. It's just there's like everything needs to be exactly tuned properly. The RAM, the SSD. Even the frequency of the RAM is important, in comparison, like all of that stuff. There's some very specific things you have to hit. Yeah. So it's not unusual, but like as the Gen 12 renderer has been introduced, I've been getting better performance, and a lot of people who have worse systems are getting better performance as well, because it's already started to be implemented.
Right. Yeah.
And I think as that rolls out, we'll see the performance increase, which will then allow for people to go, with these, the people joke like, oh yeah, this FPS AI isn't that bad. It's like, they're not bad because CIG intentionally tweaks them down to below the insanity level. But the second CIG thinks that they fix the problems and they can do this, you're going to go from derp, like good AI that's kind of shooting at you, to them calling out cover and running over things and charging you and throwing grenades at you and hitting you with rocket launchers. You'll go from being like, oh yeah, this is enjoyable, but a little easy, to like,
so the inverse of your series, Paul. It's 0 to 0.
To I need friends.
You're gonna be like, I'll stick to mining.
Yeah.
What I said there about being incremental is exactly what Paul is saying there. That rollout, as things come out, it's going to be incremental. You're going to see a little bit of improvement, a little bit of improvement, a little bit of improvement. And the Gen 12 is one of those things, because that allows them access to some of the older graphics cards to come online. The real big one for me that I wanted this year was the interior culling, because that blew my mind. That wasn't, I thought that was just, to me, I'm like, as a developer, that's got to automatically be in. That'd be like the first thing I did.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that seems like a very obvious thing, but I guess because of the nature of the ships, it's probably pretty hard to do.
Oh, they also have to get persistence in. I think that's another reason why they had to do the calling thing had to change, is because they have to get persistence in to make sure that the calling can work. Because then you have persistent states for the interior. Because if you call the interior without persistent states, if you drop a gun in the middle of your freelancer's cargo bay and then you call the interior because no one's there, then that gun's gone too. Yeah. So you need to have some way of saving that state. I think that's one of the reasons why. So when we see the persistence, we'll see that come in probably at the same time. That's the other thing. It's like persistence. Gen 12, all of these things were going to impact you a lot more than the server meshing. And then when server meshing comes online, it'll allow you to have the fun and then increase it. Yeah. That's just basically what it is.
And
so in short, there is no Jesus patch. It's a combination of everything.
But Gen 12 is what it sounds like you are most hyped for.
Yes. Yeah. And only because CIG seems to be the most hyped for it. So
it's a good time. It's we spend a lot of time talking about the ships and some of the negatives of IAE and Star Citizen in general. And there are some other things that we've talked about, not necessarily on the show, but concerns and things that'll probably come up in info runners or captain's table at some point in the near future. But overall, I feel like the game's in a good spot development wise. This sort of new development we've been seeing this last year really feels forward facing. Feels like we're getting there. Feels like we're getting some of these things that we've heard for a while, the planet tech, the physical inventory stuff, the medic system, the cargo refactor. So that stuff's cool. And I hope you guys feel the same. I'm not sure where you sit on the scale, but I like what we're seeing.
As long as we're making progress, as long as they're moving forward. And I'm always looking for that, even when it slows down, because they're not sharing stuff. But ever since day one, I've been looking for steps forward.
Yeah, it's just we'll always get on their case to try and make sure that it stays in line with what the company wants, but also what like the Star Citizen community wants, because you know how they can be. But anyways, thank you both so much for being here. I want to pass it to you now. Tell people where they can find you, what content you're making, and all that jazz. Give them the goodbye, and we'll get out of here and go get some. I don't know.
I hate talking about myself, man.
Do it.
What do you guys do? All right, so Infrunners is on YouTube. You can find us by searching YouTube for Infrunners. What do we do? We deep dive. We help people with ships, recommendations, financial advice in the form of trying to save you money through CCUs, things like that. That's majority of our content around the sales is really trying to help you guys get some cheap. Let me put it this way. The title of the video will be something like this tomorrow for the CCU chain guide. How does a $95 carrack sound?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'll leave it at that.
But also, Execute, do you not have something else that you're in the works to get started?
I am not ready for the streaming stuff, but and I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to do just YouTube or both or Twitch. So, but yeah, I'll be under the name of Execute Australia, or as in AUS. So,
well, thank you, Astro Pub.
Twitch.tv/theastropub, youtube.com/theastropub. I'm live Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sundays. Usually I'm live on Fridays and Saturdays at about 9 p.m. EST, and on Saturdays and Sundays, usually around 1 p.m. EST. I'm not streaming today because I was here on the podcast, but you can catch us normally for that. And then on Friday, we've got a paid opportunity, which is also doing some good things. So there'll be some prizes offered, and we'll be playing Star Citizen. So catch me live at twitch.tv/theastropub at 9 p.m. Eastern for the stream, and you'll see more later. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. So.
Awesome. I will definitely show up for that.
Someone said this to me the other day, and you correct me if you think this is a bad analogy, because I don't want it to seem bad or whatever. But someone said Captain's Table to me is like Infrunners Live.
Kind of.
I think it's similar, but not quite the same. It's got its own thing.
It's different. I'd say Infrunners is much more about specifics, and you do through crafting, but Captain's Table is much more, which I do on Saturdays live at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. UTC. It's usually okay. I'm an okay podcast.
Community involvement for me.
Both of these have been there, and it's a lot more like discussing. We'll talk about subjects specifically, usually about what the week's going. Sometimes we'll do an overarching subject, but it's much more like an old radio talk show where you'll have, sometimes it'll just be talking about what's the latest. Sometimes it's talking about something far in the future. Sometimes it's just a recap of what's happening. This week we talked about the Odyssey, but we also talked about lore because we had two lore experts on, as well as Tecton, who's an actual geologist who works is working with looking to work with metals and metal extraction from the earth and such. So
pretty cool.
So it was an interesting discussion.
I don't know about you, Space, but for me, when I'm on Captain's Table, it's just relax and cause havoc for Paul. That's
I love
my favorite
Captain's Table. Captain's
show.
Table is such a cool. See, here I have to be responsible and stuff, but on Captain's Table I can just go do whatever,
where Paul comes on Infrunners and he just causes havoc for me. So it's a tit for tat situation.
Yeah, exactly. That's how
if I go too far, he'll go too far on Infrunners, and vice versa. So.
Yeah, they come back for you. But Paul's been a great guest today, so I imagine I'll have to be at least kind of decent on Captain's Table next time. But we'll see. I want to get into that lore podcast.
Yeah. Lore podcast. I got to talk to you about that. Yeah.
That
the Lore
like
Citizen.
Fun. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
But for those of you who don't know what I also do with Jail and Algrid, I do a podcast called Lore Citizen, which is just kind of an hour-long pre-recorded show where we just talk about lore. So Tomato's been asking to get onto it, so
I also need to get Algrid on here.
Yes. I might come on the Lord podcast sometime with a whole bunch of questions, because I do have a lot of questions about things I want to know, and I do reach out from time to time and say, that thing I asked you about Crusader when we were talking about Crusader Day, where do you think they fit? Do you remember when I asked that?
Yeah,
during the week. Yeah. So things like that I just won't know, and Paul's like an encyclopedia in that regard.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being here, listening to the podcast, or watching if you're on YouTube. But you don't have to watch this on YouTube. YouTube does have ads, and it requires you to go and watch a video. We have an audio format. It's distributed on all the major platforms: Apple Podcasts, Audible, Anchor, Spotify, Pocket Cast. Wherever you want to find it, you can come and listen to all these sweet voices come on here and chat about Star Citizen. The audio podcast is supported by our patrons. It is ad-free. It is completely free for everybody to watch. So if you would like to help support that, or support some of the deeper projects we'll be getting into in the next couple of months, consider jumping on Patreon, signing up for the lowest tier, get a couple of the perks. If not, though, very happy to see you here. Please consider checking out the YouTube channel, the website. We've got giveaways going on, blog posts, and new merch coming out. But again, I'd like to just thank you for coming around to the launch sequence. I hope you guys enjoy your week, and we will all. Sorry?
Or link me one. Send us t-shirts or link us one, and we'll wear them on Infrunners.
Oh, for sure. We're working on some socks. We're working on some socks now. I think you guys will like them.
On a show, unless we're doing puppets, but
feet streams. The people love them.
Ooh, feet streams.
We talk, but it's just videos of our feet.
That's some too hot for YouTube stuff right
that's
there.
That's NSFW. We might not be allowed on YouTube. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching or listening. I've been Space Tomato. My friends Astro Pub and Execute. We will all see you later.